English translation 154th contact. Friday, 4th of December 1981, 23:01 hours.
You obviously have an urgent matter once again, which is why I had to come so quickly.
You can indeed say that, for once again, it just does not work with the night watch.
This had to follow in such a manner because, as usual, Elsa does not hold to the provisions, if I am not mistaken.
You are not mistaken, because that is actually the main reason for the shift starting again. But otherwise, difficulties also arise because there just are not enough people who could regularly take over this task. For this reason, I would like to make the proposal that in the future, only those living in the center perform this task, but in return, the rest fulfill their duties simply through additional monthly work.
That idea can indeed be discussed, but concerning this, I would have another proposal to make. Stick to the arrangements established by me, but exchange Elsa for Roland, then the units remain the same.
Unfortunately, that just will not work, because Rolly has been working away from home for the last 2 months.
Of course, that is of correctness. I have overlooked that. There is but one solution to the problem. Roland still takes over the duty of Elsa, but at half-task, while the other half will be completed by another group member.
That is already happening because he carries out his watch as a half with Bernadette.
But my determination was Bernadette and Cornelia together.
But that did not work, which is why a shift had to be made.
Then the solution can only be that all group members carry out the duty of the night watch in turn with Roland. There are 9 group members living in the center who can carry out this duty. This means that every group member takes over a night watch, together with Roland, once every 8th week, and that Roland performs an entire night watch in the 9th week, by which means a balance is achieved.
You forget that Roland performs the night watch with Bernadette.
I am a little confused. Of course, that is of correctness. Thus my proposal applies to Cornelia.
Good, that will work. But what if she also goes to work away from home? How then would she be able to take over a whole watch?
Then the plan is to make it so that she can perform a whole watch on a Friday or Saturday.
Of course that works.
The other group members, however, should still be incorporated into the duty of the night watch. In order, however, that the plan may not be disordered at another time, this duty should be thus fulfilled in each case that the regular watch participants are replaced, whereby the plan is further obeyed in the manner as if they had performed their watch.
That is a good idea. It is even better than your first, so we will stick with that. Thus, I can still bring up something else that occupies me and only concerns members of the Codex, but not other human beings. This is an issue over which I have been troubled for 2 days. You recently told me that a member of the Codex goes so far in his or her determinations of his or her life for the next life that he or she even predetermines at what age he or she can count on finding his or her real and true life partner. And you said that this would be the case for Kay in her 25th year of age. However, the whole thing really only applies to human beings who are interconnected to the Codex, which will expire in the coming time, however, forcing all predeterminations to then be cancelled for further lives, as the same is true for the years of life to be made up when a life ends too soon. If the Codex is broken, then the clause for the Codex bearers also falls, if, consequently, no more making up takes place for years that were not lived long enough. Since everything really only concerns members of the Codex, it all is not the norm.
That is all of correctness. But with respect to Kay, I explained to you that with her, the relevant and necessary swinging waves have been disturbed by irregularities, whereby a postponement of up to 3 years can already result. Thus, she must count on the fact that her own destiny will first take effect when she is 28 years old. Thus, what you have written in the book, Life and Death, that years not lived in a life must be made up in the next life, does not apply to human beings in general, but only to those groups who have incorporated themselves into the Codex, which will become ineffective, dissolved, and cancelled in the near future, however, as a result of the fulfillment of certain values.
I know, I have understood everything. As I have inferred from your words, in each case, every Codex-affiliated human being, already in the preceding life, determines for the next life the time or age from which he could possibly meet his life partner, who really is the right one. As Asket already explained to me once before, this destiny can and will be disturbed if the male or female Codex member does not hold to this determined time. So for example, if he or she, already before this determined point in time, enters into commitments that are not according to destiny, and that are, thus, wrong. Such commitments disturb destiny in its flow because they are usually wrongly based on emotions, and they also proceed from wrong thoughts, causing a mental disorder to appear, which displaces those necessary swinging waves that should decisively attract the destined life partner. Even if this one belongs to another race, and is tens of thousands or millions of kilometers away, and has no direct, material, conscious knowledge of his or her partner. Nevertheless, the subconscious forms connect and find each other, so one partner will find the other with absolute certainty if the destiny-swinging waves of the psyche, which are sent out through the material as well as through the subconscious form and then received again, are functioning properly and are not disturbed by false influences. But the danger of the disturbance or even the destruction of destiny-swinging waves is presently very large, due to the wrong lifestyles and the wrong environmental influences associated with them and so on, but above all, due to the fact that the lack of knowledge of the human beings in relation to the teaching and its impact, as well as to the causes and effects of thinking, of material consciousness, as well as of the workings of the subconscious and the determinations and the power of the psyche, usually lets the human beings act wrongfully,
whereby they ignore their determinations and even destroy them in many cases.
This usually leads to the fact that descendants who are not determined are produced, who must grow up in one case without a father, or in another case with a wrong father and a wrong mother, when an already false and not determined marriage is entered, or when, through another false and not determined marriage, they are brought up by a just as wrong foster father. This, then, is often the reason why such children are abused by their forced parents and are even killed. But in the very least cases, they simply find disdain or expulsion. The human beings of the earth then simply call such parents cruel parents, but through the overall disregard of the provision for marriage. It also happens that many wrong and not determined marriages are entered, from which also many descendants originate who also are not determined. These descendants then largely find no connection in their families, as well as not in the environment and in the society of their civilization. As I know, you designate these non-determined descendants as descendants of overpopulation. These are human beings who are produced thoughtlessly and through falsehood, and who become placed into the world, and who therefore cannot find their way in the world within a natural framework. These, then, are those who operate illegally, who become terrorists and anarchists, and who want to turn the world and the social order upside down with murder, mayhem, and violence, or with sectarianism and fanaticism. And the more the human beings of the earth produce such not determined or unconsidered offspring and bring them into the world, the greater the number of human beings of overpopulation and, with it, the number of those who cry for murder, war, mayhem, revenge, hatred, sectarianism, fanaticism, terrorism, and anarchism, and who also manage it all. From this, it follows that with the number of the overpopulation, containing not determined as well as irresponsibly produced descendants, murder, mayhem, crime, and sectarianism, etc., continue to grow steadily and tremendously and cannot be contained. But these non-determined, as well as irresponsibly produced descendants, also include those flipped-out ones who are abnormal or have fallen to euphoria, etc.
That is in every word of correctness, but it would still be necessary to explain even more. We will do this, but at another time, for after what you have stated, it is necessary that I declare a guideline for this, according to which the Earth human will be able to align himself or herself with respect to his or her destiny for their life partner.
If I may interrupt you, I have been troubled with this problem for 2 days. But unfortunately, I only had as a guide the data on K-Jue, which you mentioned to me. Thus, I have calculated my head off and have achieved all sorts of results. I just hope that my calculations are correct.
You have probably made miscalculations, because the calculation of these data is extremely difficult, and moreover, the values are variable, depending on the total population of the planet. In addition, it is also true that the values are not uniform for all races.
That is exactly what I have found out.
Now you make me curious, and I almost want to suppose that you have actually managed to do it. Nevertheless, that would be more than just extraordinary.
Can I read aloud my calculations for you at once?
I am curious.
Good. Just do not laugh if I am wrong with these. My results are as follows. First of all, I realize that all values must be built on certain basic values, and that these, in turn, are associated with very specific star signs. Is that right?
It surprises me no more.
So then that is right. Okay, then it is also probably right that for males and females, 2 different basic values are given, but these values are also valid for hybrids of the respective race?
I have nothing more to add. Have you consulted the memory block?
No.
Phenomenal.
Thanks, you are generous.
Truly phenomenal.
That is enough. Then I will now continue on. For the white human beings of the Earth and their hybrids, the following values are valid. These are the basic values that stand as age years. In addition to these, in each case, there still comes the basic numerical value of a Kabbalistic form, between 1 and 9, which arises from the birthday and the natal month in added-up form to the base number. Thus, my list states that, for example, if a human being of the Earth is born on 16th of March and is female, at the age of 29 years, she will be at the determined age to find the right life partner. Although this may still take a shorter or longer time because the destiny-swinging waves first become fully effective at this age. Thus, it can take 1 or 2 or even several more years before the effect of the cause is sufficient. I come to this aforementioned result because 16 and 3 results in 10. Therefore, the cardinal number 1 originates from it, which is then added to the basic value according to my mentioned basic value list, so to 28. And 28 plus 1 equals 29. Is this right now, my son?
If I did not hear it with my own ears, I would have doubted it. Phenomenal. Down to the last detail, everything is of correctness. A further comment is unnecessary.
Thanks, you are too kind, but at this moment, listen further. These calculations only have their correctness for the present number of humanity, of 4.3 billion 4,300,000,000. For each additional increase of 500 million in the human beings of overpopulation, the basic value number increases by another 2 points, that is to say 2 years. But for every decrease of 500 million in the overpopulation, seen from today's 4.3 billion 4,300,000,000 figure, the value decreases in each case by 0.5, so by half a year in each case. If only the normal planet-conditioned population of 500 million, or more precisely 529 million, was on the Earth, then all of the basic values would be about 4 points, that is to say 4 years, lower. Is that also right now?
I have nothing to add.
You slowly become sparing.
I feel ashamed because in order to grasp these matters, I needed some educational assistance. You, however, calculate these data from your own powers, which is embarrassing for me, however, as it was before with other calculations through your own initiative.
That should not be so, my friend, for you should know my mission, and should also know that I cannot help but come back mobilized from stored knowledge and capabilities from many previous times, and further educated with new cognitions.
That is of correctness, nevertheless it shames me. Without question, I know no envy, my dear friend, but shame is my own.
You are making a basic mistake, son. You only see the earthworm in me, the earthling. But I am not that, at least, not originally.
Nevertheless,
You are illogical. Think of Gabriel.
that you know my earlier personal origin?
But of course, and also no one had to tell me this. I have known this since that time when I first saw you.
You really know how to keep a secret.
I had no reason to talk about it, you former half-earthling. You are, nevertheless, just a little bit younger, even though you are now more knowledgeable in many things, while I take care of my knowledge and capabilities somewhat unilaterally, and am trying to do my best there.
Truly, that is also so, you Lyran. I no longer feel ashamed at all. Thanks, brother.
You not only have humor, but you are also sentimental. Halankange Methuselah.
That was then.
Of course, for we live in today. Thus, I am back on topic. I have here the data of values for the other Earth humans, if I may still read these aloud.
So be it.
Very well. For the yellow human beings the following applies, and by this, I mean the Japanese and Chinese, as well as all other yellow-skinned human beings. It is also true for their hybrids. Next follow the brown human beings, to whom I also count Africans, Brazilians, Indians, and islanders, etc. of all kinds. Then follow the red human beings, so the pure Indians and their hybrids, but to whom the so-called wild Indians and jungle Indians are not counted, who fall among primitive peoples. Besides those previously mentioned, however, there are still many various other kinds of human beings on the Earth, who also have different skin colors, but within the context of the aforementioned. But these kinds of human beings are mostly primitive peoples, like pygmies, jungle Indians, so-called indigenous people, like in Australia, New Guinea, and so on and so forth. If I had to calculate all their data, then I still would not be finished with it today, which is why I was content to deal with the highest standing primitive peoples, whose data are as follows. Especially among the primitive peoples, it is striking that the basic values are sometimes very low, which I have thought about. Thus, I have come to the conclusion that, indeed, the average life expectancy of a type of human being must play an important role in this determination, but I have not tested or calculated this. But maybe you can give me information about this?
That is actually so. The lower the life expectancy of a race to be calculated, the lower the basic values. That is therefore of correctness.
Then that is right. I still have another question, but which does not refer to these things but to smoking, as Sim Yase once told me, but so did you. Smoking is a lot less dangerous than what is always maintained by anti-smoking organizations, etc. But Sim Yase told me very specifically that these anti-smoking campaigns were not driven because of and against smoking, but rather to cover up far worse things. About this, I would gladly like to learn a little more from you, if you can give me information. For my part, I only know from Sim Ya say that scientists and even certain governments are behind these campaigns against smoking because they want to conceal their criminal machinations thereby, namely the contaminations of the atmosphere and landscape with different kinds of poisons and the like. But mainly, as Sim Yase said, the various contaminations generate the largest percentage of all those cases of disease that are well known as cancer and that are attributed to smoking pleasure. Thus, the criminal contamination of the atmosphere and food, etc., is concealed by this, while these scourges among humanity are simply imputed to smoking alone. But all those are to blame for this great contamination, who produce contaminated food and all sorts of substances or let such accumulate or escape, even if these are only tiny amounts, such as radioactive waste or outfalls in hospitals or nuclear power plants, etc. The leaked radioactive radiation is held in the air and is whirled about, as it is also stored in all existing matter. Therefore, if a human being or some other living organism inhales such air, then he automatically arrives into the deadly pleasure of the radioactive radiation, which also has an incredibly strong carcinogenic effect. And how cancer has gained ground with the human beings of the Earth since the first atomic bomb explosion on Earth, this will be clear to each one who actually gets to the bottom of these things. Indeed, it is not that cancer was already on the rise before. Rather, it only came about since human beings and all earthly life forms began to eat contaminated food, to live with contaminated substances and hazardous waste, and to breathe in radioactive air.
That is of correctness. Both your words about the concerns about food, nuclear use, and radioactivity, as well as the fact that criminal machinations are pursued in order to make smoking pleasure primarily responsible for humanity's scourge of cancer through the use of false propaganda. Smoking pleasure is truly only to blame for this epidemic to a lesser extent, and such has been the case for a long time, because the actual damages of smoking are of a different nature, such as in the areas of nerve damage and the asthmatization of the respiratory organs, etc., as well as the impairment of blood circulation through deposits in the bloodstreams, etc. But all these phenomena of smoking pleasure are even lower, relatively seen, than the damage of the bodies and organs of human beings and their necessary physical developments, etc., by widespread vegetarianism as well as by the criminal pollution and contamination of foods and substances of vital importance of all kinds and the air, but also by released radioactivity.
Then vegetarianism should be more harmful to human beings than an average amount of smoking?
That is a very important correctness, but this should not suggest that this means an animation activation for the smoking pleasure. Smoking is harmful in every case, but often less harmful than other wrong actions and lifestyles.
Good. Then still one last question in regards to the Legionnaire's disease that first appeared in America, which has claimed so many human lives and which has also appeared in Switzerland, in St. Gallen, in the Canton Hospital. You told me some time ago that this disease originates in ventilation shafts or air conditioning shafts. In addition, you also said at that time that in America, the plague will appear again, but so far, I still have not heard or read anything about this on TV or in the newspapers. Should this probably be concealed?
That corresponds to the facts. Several cases of plague have already appeared in the USA, but these are not largely publicized.
Is it the same kind of plague that also broke out again in the south of India some time ago, and that, centuries ago, eradicated half the nations?
Yes, it concerns the same epidemic. If the Earth humans had been wiser at that time, then this epidemic could not have been so rampant. But today,
Like then,
the reason for the transmission of the epidemic lies with the fault of human beings, because the keeping of house pets in the human living spaces as well as the close physical contact with such animals, are to blame for the transmission and spread of the plague epidemic. But with regard to the Legionnaire's disease, the following is to be said. This also concerns an epidemic, but it does not come from the earth. For it was driven here as tiny particles from outer space, as it is written in Emmanuel's prophecy, which says that epidemics from the space above will fall to the earth. With the particles now driven here from space, which caused the Legionnaire's epidemic, it concerns a germ, a bacterium that is very fond of living in a chemically and radioactively contaminated atmosphere, and that spreads out in this. Nevertheless, it is bound to a very specific climate, whereby it cannot multiply and spread out in the warm sunshine or in very cold weather. Great heat kills it when it cannot remain in running bloodstreams, but great cold freezes it, so it solidifies very quickly, but at a certain temperature, it awakens back to life. On the Earth, the essential climate for this bacterium only prevails in air conditioning shafts, as you said. There, these deadly bacteria can live and multiply exceedingly, but they only become dangerous and deadly to human beings through a metamorphosis, through a transformation process that only comes about through the poisoned, polluted, and contaminated air. Once they have transformed themselves, they can then be driven through the air currents of the air conditioners in order to arrive into the human living spaces after they have become immune to greater heat influences. Once they arrive into the air of a living space of human beings, they become inhaled by the human beings, by what means the deadly bacteria arrive into the respiratory organs and into the lungs, in which the germs spread very quickly and cause deadly or at least life-threatening inflammations, after which the germs then transfer immediately into the bloodstreams and also pursue their work of destruction there. Here again the blame lies with those who are responsible for the fact that poisons and radioactivity arrive into the earthly atmosphere. But now it would be time for me to say goodbye, and do not forget that on Monday or Tuesday I need those details of Elizabeth, which I have asked you to get for me. Now until we meet again, my friend.
Take care, see you next week.